This conference will now be recorded.
Welcome back to Live Talk with Dr. B. Hill. We are going to have our special guest today returning. So if we have anybody listening right now, and use the chat button on the right hand side if you have any questions, and we will be glad to answer them. So Dr. B, take it away.
Thank you so much. And we have, of course, Dr. Smith with us and wonderful Travis with us, and that's really great. We've had some really good meetings and discussions going on, which I think have been really terrific. And we will be inviting additional guests starting next week. So, Dr. Smith, would you like to take it away? And I'll stay right here with you.
Well, thank you, B. Dr. B. I'm curious who you're having next week as guests. Do you know?
Yes, some of the people that have gone ahead and ordered the DNA test.
Perfect, perfect. Let's talk about that DNA test a little bit. The DNA test is for the purpose of answering a number of questions. One of the questions is, am I an opioid addict, or has my body been damaged by exposure to the opioids? Now, if your body has been damaged by exposure to the opioids, more specifically, if your DNA has been damaged by exposure to the opioids, okay, your genetic information, you get half your genetic information from uh, uh, your mom and half your genetic information from your father. And that's the genetic makeup that you have. You pass this genetic information on to your children, and that's fundamental of life. It is the task, it is the job of the FDA to make sure that products, drugs, are safe before they're put out into for commercial use, before they're used in the public. It is the job of the FDA to evaluate these drugs, and part of the job of the FDA is to make sure that something doesn't get out into the public that causes genetic damage. Along these lines, the FDA does a very good job of making sure that drugs do not cause a specific type of genetic damage called mutations, which is a change in the sequence of the DNA. DNA are like little building blocks. There's four letters, and the order of those letters determines the DNA information. And it's very important that the order of those letters is not changed. But DNA is like a copper wire with an insulation around it. Think of the sequence of the DNA like the copper wire, and then the insulation around the copper wire. That's an area that we call in science the epigenetics. And poisoning can take place either way. It can take place inside the copper wire itself. It can take place inside the insulation. If it takes place inside the copper wire, it's a change in the sequence. It's called a mutation. If it takes place in the insulating plastic, most likely it's a methylation. Um, and for reasons that aren't clear, the FDA does a great job of checking for methylation, checking for mutations, but they don't have anything in place to check for methylations. And Chrissy, if you'd be so kind as to pull up our first slide there. And this is an article from 2012. Oh, actually, that's our DNA. All right. So we'll there's the article from 2012. So this article is now what, 11 years old. This is a very scientific article. You've got to be careful with this article. This article will scare people. These are huge, massive words. But I think we could spend some time with this article and break it down so people can understand it. Uh, you see right there the title of the article, The Implications of DNA Methylation for Toxicology, Toward Toxicomethylamics, the Toxicology of DNA Methylation. I think we can just use the last phrase there as the title of this article, and we'll just call it the toxicology of DNA methylation. Now, toxicology is a very specific word. Toxicology is a study of poisonings. So when you say toxicology, you mean poisoning. So what the author here, Moshe Sef, what the author here is saying is that DNA methylation, when it's caused by a drug, is a form of poisoning. And that really puts emphasis onto the FDA. If DNA methylation is a known form of poisoning, this is all the way back, this is 11 years ago. And by the way, the FDA is still not checking for methylation. This is 11 years ago. And this article was clearly written for the experts at places like the FDA to get in gear and start checking for the methylation. But let me read this one quote here. And I think this is one of the most important quotes of the entire opioid crisis. Okay, definitely top 5. I think this is one of the most important quotes to understand the opioid crisis. And here's what it says. This is Dr. Moshe Sef. The realization that long-range damage could be caused without changing the DNA sequence has important implications on the way we assess the safety of chemicals, drugs, and food, and broadens the scope of definition of toxic agents. Now, big words. We got to take it apart. We got to go through it. Big words. And Travis, we look to you to help us break these words down to a level where everybody can understand it. But I put forth right now that quote that I just read, as difficult as it is, as complex as it is, as thick in science as it is, that quote is one of the most important quotes from the opioid crisis. And Travis, I want to go through the words one by one, and let's start with the realization that long range damage could be caused without changing the DNA sequence. Okay, so Travis, what they're saying there is you can change a person's DNA, and by long range, I assume they're meaning multi-generational. You can change a person's DNA and have that change passed down through the generations, passed down to your children, okay, without changing the sequence of the DNA, without a mutation. That's what the realization is. And Dr. Sef there is calling it a realization. And Travis, this is what happened to you. Your genetic sequence was not changed. Your genetic sequence was not changed. You do not have a genetic mutation. Exposure to the opioids caused methylation, the addition of a carbon and 3 hydrogens onto specific areas of your DNA, specifically the CPG islands, are like little on and off switches. And the addition of that methyl group, the methylation to your DNA, is most likely, is believed to be permanent. We don't have any evidence contrary. Is believed to be permanent, believed to be heritable. We don't have a whole lot of evidence. And so, Travis, what this is saying is that because the FDA did not check for methylation before they approved the opioids, Travis, you and hundreds of thousands, literally millions of other people, you've had your DNA changed. Travis, what are your thoughts about that, and your thoughts about this quote, and where are we with this?
So my thoughts of that, I just I don't understand why the FDA didn't look into the methylation further. I understand you have to check for mutations. I get that. But the methylation damages the DNA as well. Messes up the receptors, turns them off. I mean, and like you said, we don't have all the research, but as far as we know, it's permanent. They never come back on. So I'm just not understanding why they wouldn't have done the full research before putting out a medicine out into the masses the way that they did, without crossing all their T's and dotting all their I's. Basically, is what I'm saying. I just don't see how that was allowed.
Dr. B, what are your thoughts?
My
Dr.
thoughts
B,
are, I got my, I had my speaker off because my dog is here and talking to the other dog. Um, I would say that it's the same scenario as Travis said, but I would also say that they're saying that, in my opinion, they're saying that it's not going to change your DNA. Your DNA is going to stay the same after you've been poisoned. And you know, there's implications on the way that we assess the safety, just like it says there. And maybe we should, or maybe the FDA should look at doing further evaluations on new medications that are coming out, especially ones that are considered narcotics, or they're different levels, 3, 4, 2, 1. Those kind of ones that they really should go ahead and check. Like you said, the problem is in the outer side, which they don't check. They only check the center, and not paying any attention to how it's wrapped or taken care of. So there is a safety issue there as far as I'm concerned as well.
Travis, this article came out in 2011. Okay, this article is old. Okay, Travis, how old is your son?
well, my oldest son is 12 and my youngest son is 3.
So this article is about as old as your oldest son.
Yes.
Okay, you know how long that's been, and yet, you know, we see right here what at least I interpret as a shot across the bow, as a warning to the FDA. Hey, you need to be looking for this. And Travis, they still are not looking. Not only are they unaware that they put out a product that has poisoned the DNA of millions of people, okay, they still haven't even put in place protective mechanisms to check for methylation. It just defies common sense. And Travis, I think it moves towards the level of incompetence.
Well, it's my understanding that they really weren't even interested in our findings. They wouldn't even address them.
We did submit our data, and we did get a reply, and it was pretty obvious from the reply they aren't seeing the forest or the trees. No, no, they have a mindset, and I would go so far as to say that the FDA is, at least this segment of the FDA, the Division of Anesthesiology, Pain Medicine, and anesthesiology, addiction medicine, and pain medicine. That's the division. They're deep into a cognitive bias where they're just positive. They just absolutely know what's going on. They're just absolutely positive that the opioids are an addictive substance. And Travis, you're just an opioid addict. You're just a drug addict. And they're not looking at the science, and that's cognitive bias. And as you guys know, when it comes to cognitive bias, I very much enjoy quoting the research team of Dunning and Kruger, and I'm in agreement with Dunning and Kruger when they say that for the most part the incompetent cannot recognize their own incompetence because they are incompetent, and that to me seems like what's happened at the FDA. They are suffering the cognitive bias of drinking the Kool-Aid and eating the dog food that is the brain disease model of addiction. That Travis, you took an opioid, and that opioid caused a massive surge in your uh, in your brain of the neurotransmitter dopamine, and this massive surge of dopamine was so pleasurable that it basically hijacked your brain, and now your body is just, dedicated to chasing that high, that opioid high, that surge in dopamine. Uh, uh, We looked at the data yesterday, two excellent studies, one by Dagwitz, one by Watson. No surge in dopamine when opioids were given. So they're ignoring the science. Uh, they, you cannot share their way of thinking unless you're willing to ignore the science. So they are ignoring the science. And I guess it should not be a surprise that they're ignoring this science also. If they're
It's
ignoring the science,
almost like they're one division is covering up for the other one, that they don't want to step out and be that person that stands out and is looking at what you're talking about. It's almost like if they do, then they're blacklisted.
well, it is going to be interesting to see when the truth comes out. It is going to be interesting to see what happens. There's no precedence for this. There has never been this large of a cognitive bias. There has never been science ignored this level. And Travis, the point that I was making is, yesterday we looked at how they were ignoring the science about, hey, we did this studies, there was no surge in dopamine, and they completely ignored those studies. And Travis, I guess what I'm saying is that it looks like the same thing is happening here. The science is right there on the screen in front of you. But once again, they have ignored the science. And that just mystifies me. That just blows me away. How can you
I
ignore
think,
science?
sorry to interrupt you, Dr. Smith.
No, please.
I honestly think that, at this point, that they're just hoping it goes away. Kind of touching back on what Dr. B has said before, you know, when you've said something for so long and you've had it out into the into the population, and you've had reporters talking about it, it's been on the news, and you've backed this one thing you've been saying for so long, it's probably going to be very hard for them to come out on the limb and say, hey guys, we were wrong. We made a big mistake. We overlooked this part, and we messed up. Because that's taking the blame. That they're pointing the finger at themselves, and they're going to have to be responsible for millions of lives lost, and even more that have been disrupted and completely demolished from opioids. Families that have been completely broken up. So it's just I think they're having a problem with the responsibility. Like I, I personally feel like someone has to know at this point where they went wrong, but they just don't want to come out and say it because they don't want to be held responsible.
So they're
And
blaming you instead. They're
exactly. So
blaming you.
they're blaming the providers, and they're blaming the patients, and it's just the easier way out. It's just okay, hey, we had to come up with an idea real fast on what's going on here and who's at fault, because we don't want to go down for this, guys, and that's just a concept that I'm just my feeling. I don't have any proof to back that up, but you know at this point there's not too many theories that are really going to make sense, because there's so many different studies that are right here in front of their faces, including ours, and they just don't want to accept the science. And so at that point, it goes from a level of incompetence to, okay, what's really going on here? Are you guys just completely ignoring everything, or are you incompetent? But me personally, after a couple of different, if I have a couple of different people bringing me proof about something, and I continue to ignore it, at that point it's no longer being incompetent. It's just you're strictly ignoring the reality of the situation. You're not taking it seriously at that point, and you're not doing what you have to do. And that's what I feel they're doing. They're not taking this as serious as they should. They're hoping it's just going to go all away. Hey, if we just ignore this, they're just going to go away. It's going to be just another story in a couple of years that nobody will even talk about. And that's just my personal opinion at this point.
Travis, do you think there's a possibility that this DNA test could be the catalyst, could be the trigger, could be the thing that um, starts to bring down their house of cards?
Yes, I do. And I also think it could save a lot of lives. But most definitely it would bring down their house because, like I said, you have this evidence that completely trumps anything that they have. So, of course they're going to fight that going out into the population for the masses to see because they don't want to be wrong. They don't want to take responsibility.
That's for sure.
And these people have gotten used to being the experts. You see them testifying in front of Congress. You see them on TV. They're treated as experts. They're treated as if they are a source of knowledge. And they are a source, but they are not a source of knowledge. They are a source of snake oil.
Nobody wants to rock the boat.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to go through the heavy seas. They all want to stay on the straight and narrow. Let's not change anything. We're doing just fine.
Yeah, everybody's making money. We're doing good. Let's not mess anything else up. We got all these people brainwashed, and I'm sorry to use the word brainwash, but at this point, that's what I feel like they're doing. They're you're lying, but at the same time, it's past lying at this point. You're literally trying to brainwash people into believing a theory that has no scientific evidence to back it up. And we have proof of our own to back up what we're saying. So, and if you continue to ignore the proof and the facts, at that point, it's no longer incompetence to me. It's just
you gotta
only to keep your credibility, just so your credibility doesn't get washed away. I don't agree with that. When it comes to human life, if there's something else that can help save lives, as a scientist and also as someone in power, you should want to take the route that's going to help the most people. And that's just my personal belief as a human being and as a person. But not everybody's the same. But I would want the truth. I would want the real science. We're talking about medications here. We're talking about opioids. This is very serious and very important subject. So they should have did everything in their power to ensure that they were doing the right thing for the people. The people is the ones that are taking the medication. You have to do the right thing for the people who are going to be taking this stuff, and that's where they messed up.
You're right. I put the shoe on the other foot the other day, okay? And I sat there and said, okay, I'm vocal, okay? I believe in my science, in the science that I say I have. But do I believe in it so much that I can whip it out and sit there and go face to face with you, Dr. Smith, and show you my science and you show me your science? I'll show you mine if you show me yours. No, I don't have that card. I can't sit there and do that. So I can't come face to face with you because I have nothing to face with you. So therefore, I'm going to keep on doing what I'm doing. I'm going to say, Travis, it's all your fault. Your brain is defective. Everything, it's all your fault. We're doing everything exactly right. And ask anybody. They'll all tell you it's a brain problem. How do they know it's a brain problem? Because you told them it was a brain problem. That's how they know it was a brain problem. What did you show them? There wasn't anything. There's newer ways to go ahead and look at things and check out things, and we have the science, and you cannot ignore the science.
We do have the science, but Dr. B, you got to be careful going head to head with these people because they already have a weapon in place. Chrissy, there's a slide called "The Stages of Addiction," and I realize we just have a couple of minutes here, but if we can pull that slide, if not, we'll look at it tomorrow. And this is a slide of the brain, the one that we from Dr. Volkow's article in January 2016 of the New England Journal of Medicine. And B, what they do is they wrap themselves in really big words. and it sounds like they know what they're talking about. But that's how they do it. And for the layperson to see through the ruse, for the layperson to see through the deception, for the layperson to see through the fraud is difficult. You know, typically, if somebody uses big words, you trust them. They must know what they're talking about. They're using big words. Okay, and they make these words up. Words like neuroadaptions. Okay, well, this stuff is they're making it up, but it's hard to argue with because they use the big words. And that's why I like showing that slide, the stages of addiction. And Travis, you know what I'm talking about here. It's the one that says, there it is.
Yep. Yep.
There. All right. All right. You want to see some big words? Okay. There they are. Okay. And that's the problem. They have soaked themselves in big words. They have surrounded themselves in big words. It gives the illusion that they know what they're talking about. Travis, remember we looked at this and when we really looked at it, we saw what they said about withdrawal, and that withdrawal was what was it? Feeling reduced excitement.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean that's just insulting.
Feeling reduced energy, feeling reduced excitement, and feeling depressed, anxious, and restless.
Yeah, that's just insulting. Travis, you were one of the volunteers who volunteered to go 3 days into withdrawal and have your blood drawn, and 13 out of 15 of the very brave volunteers participants that did that, their blood showed dangerously elevated adrenaline levels, and that's the real science. The reason those adrenaline levels are elevated, we believe, is because in withdrawal you lose control of the nerves that control the organs. So you lose control of all your organs, but you lose control of your adrenal gland, and that thing will kill you. And that's why everybody had elevated adrenaline levels, was they lost control of the nerves that oversee the organs. And it's insulting. That's a life-threatening situation. And to call a life-threatening situation a state of feeling reduced excitement, I'm sorry, but these people have blood on their hands.
Yes, they do. Lots of it.
They don't take responsibility for what they've done. They don't
No, they
take
don't.
responsibility for what they've done. They
They
deny
don't
the.
want to rock the boat. The boat is happy. The boat is doing fine.
Everybody's the expert. Everybody's making money. By the way, the last point I'm going to make on this, and then I'm going to go quiet today because I'm getting irritated. These people irritate me. I can only look at Dr. Volkow's article for so long before my blood pressure goes up. But the last point that I'm going to make today is this one. Guys, the pharmaceutical companies could not manufacture the opioids if the diagnosis was anything other than a mental health diagnosis. They would not be able to manufacture. You can't manufacture a product that causes genetic damage in the manner in which they're currently manufacturing. So it sure is convenient for the pharmaceutical industry that even though their product is causing genetic damage, they're manufacturing under the illusion, under the ruse, under the scam that, oh no, it's opioid addiction, and therefore it's the individual's fault. Travis, it's your fault. Anyway, that's all I got to say today.
They definitely make me feel like it's my fault. That's for sure.
That's how they keep manufacturing.
It's easy to blame you because you can't go head to head with them. You don't have the scientific degree, the doctorate degree. You don't have the backing of the federal government. You don't have that. So therefore, it's your fault.
Well,
It's
there's
nobody
power in
else's fault but
numbers.
yours.
There's power in numbers. So if we get enough of us, we'll have the power then. So
That's right. That's right. That's right. The one small voice, when you have a crowd, becomes very loud. And hi, Chrissy, you're back.
Yes. You know, it's that time again, huh?
Yep.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today with Live Talk with Dr. B. Hill every Monday through Thursday, 12:30 to 1. So see you tomorrow.
Thank you, everybody. As usual, their conversations get better and better as time goes on, and you try to figure out things and try to understand why people's heads are so thick. Why don't they want to admit that there's a problem with what they've been saying? Thank you, Chrissy. We'll see you all tomorrow. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.